This is the PL-89 Gematriatic Quantum Thought Calendar. Sometimes I call it the Quantum Interdimensional Thought Calendar, or Interdimensional Quantum Thought Calendar. And this calendar is a lunar and solar calendar, and other calendars. This is for today, which is, it's the sunset now, so in the Jewish system, when it becomes night, it goes into the next day. But today was the 28th day of Kislev, Kafchet, the Kislev of the year 5786. It was the fourth day of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah, everyone. And the Torah portion is Miketz, and the Daf Yomi is Zevachim 95. And it's Thursday, December 18th, 2025. And this calendar, you're looking at 80 boxes, not counting the yellow and white rectangles, just the purple and lighter purple boxes. There are 8 columns called shtiim. Shti in Hebrew is the vertical. And there are 10 erevs, erevim. An erev is something that goes horizontal. Shti, erev. Vertical and horizontal. And 8 times 10, of course, is 80. And that number is connected to something else that this is connected to in the time. The time of 80 days is almost 3 months. It's 3 months minus 10 days. And those 10 days are also counted for on this calendar. It's 90 days because it's 80 days, and then there's a 10-day twilight period, it's called, which it's invisible, and it's just counted T1, T2, T3, T4, etc. until 10 or 11 days, depending on the month. Sometimes, if we're working on the Gregorian calendar, and the end of a 3-month period would be, let's just say, October 31st, or January 31st. It depends what dispensation you're in, but then it would have 11 days. Conversely, if it was a Hebrew month, some Hebrew months only have 29 days. Many of them, maybe most of them, have 29 days. 29 point something is a lunar month. So then it would end off on a 9. So, but that's accounted for here. And that's one of the reasons why it's called the PL-89. 89 refers to 80, which is the 8, and then that 10-day period, so 8, 9. But there's other reasons it's called the PL-89 Mercury calendar. 89 is right between 90 and 88. And you're thinking, yeah, so what? What does that mean? What does that have to do with this calendar? Well, this calendar was once called, and still is partially called, the Mercury calendar. And it has to do with the orbit of Mercury. What's really interesting about this is that it started, there's a satellite, and I'm just speaking about what I've read about, and it's published, you can check it online. And with the exclusion of being not a victim, but like being sucked in by fake news. If it's not true, it's not true. But this is what's written, if you look on the internet, that there was a satellite called Bepi, and there is a satellite called Bepi Colombo. And it was launched, and it's not from NASA. It's from the European Space Agency and the Japanese Space Agency, a collective endeavor from these two space agencies. And they sent a satellite with several flybys of Mars over a 7.5 or seven, almost and a half, not a half, 7.25 year period. And what's published is, you can look at some Wikipedia, you can look at it on just, if you Google Bepi Colombo, you'll see a lot of information, very detailed information about the satellite. And if you go on YouTube and you look up Bepi Colombo, you'll see they have videos on the timeline of the whole journey of the Bepi Colombo, how it was launched, and its whole timeline, and when it, and what dates it flew by, let's say Venus, what sometimes it came around Earth, and then its whole the whole journey. And it started its journey in October 20th of 2018, and that was a very important year for me, and maybe for many others, in that it was a massive change. That year, I had been called back into a certain way of life that I had known for many years. Let's call it observant Torah Judaism. I had left it for some time, and it was 2018 was the official me coming back into observant Torah Judaism practice, observing the Torah, the mitzvot, and the rabbinical laws as well, and rabbinical dictates as prescribed in what has been known as the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral law. There's a big dispute about that term. I know that. However, if you just let them be where they are, not argue with them too much, a large portion of people do have faith in something, and it's written that that which is of faith is not sin. And so, if you have faith in an oral law, okay, whatever it was, there was some kind of oral law. To what extent and to how much? I mean, there's people always adding on to it. And, I'm not going to say it wasn't abused, but I'm of the opinion that there generally, and I'm open to changing, but there was some kind of oral transmission. It would have to be. Because how would we know what, when we shake the lulav and Esther, the four types, the four species, and Sukkot time, how would we know to pick those particular things? If I just read a Hebrew Bible and I see pre-Eitz Hadar, a beautiful fruit, how would I know that that's a citron? Now, someone from the other camp could just come back and say, okay, a bunch of rabbis made that up. They said this is what it is, and that's the oral tradition. We're saying that's what it is. Standing from here, obviously there's a lot of things that you can't prove or disprove. There's a lot of faith that has to be exercised in any tradition. There is a lot of faith that has to be used. But again, whatever is of faith is not sin. And I don't think anyone can gain anything by knocking someone else's faith, provided that it's not malevolent, it's not idolatrous, it's not anti-God or hurtful to others. There's a wide spectrum of different beliefs that it can't harm you whether you believe it or don't believe it. But I'll leave it at that for now. And so this calendar part of it is to bring everything together in numbers, in gematrias, in time, And going back to Mercury, what's written about Mercury is that it orbits the sun in 88 of our Earth days, which means it was like the number was like 87.969 something. You can look it up. So it goes around the sun in this almost a 3-month period of time, which is incidentally what I spoke about yesterday about Moses. Moses was hid for 3 months. If you remember from Exodus 2, if you want to get that, I speak about that in depth in yesterday's video. But going back to the Bepi Colombo, what happened is that in 2018 I came back into the Orthodox Jewish practices and been living in that way for 7.5 years now. But here is the thing: Bepi Colombo is said to terminate its mission. It's going to be complete on December 25th. Incidentally, it's Christmas, but I don't know if they planned it that way or not. But its mission is going to be complete on December 25th of 2025, according to what's written. Again, all this stuff you can check out. And if it's wrong, please send me an email and I'll gladly go back and say it's incorrect. So this is a very special thing because this calendar is based on Mercury. It's based on the Redeemer because Moses was hid for 3 months and he was the first national Redeemer of the Jewish people, of our people, in the Exodus story. And it's written in Exodus, I think chapter 7, that when he stood before Pharaoh, he was 80 years old, hence 80 boxes. And Mercury was mentioned. Mercury is a Roman deity, a mythological deity, which is the reason that I don't call it the Mercury calendar primarily. Sometimes I call it the Luach Kochav Hamam in Hebrew, that planet's calendar. But Mercury is the same name as a certain chemical element, mercury. And I don't know if the planet Mercury has a substance or a compound or an element that that is actually what Quicksilver is. Quicksilver is mercury, the chemical element, but the atomic number, if you look on the periodic table of elements, of all the elements, the atomic number of the chemical element of mercury, same name, not the planet, the chemical element, is 80. How interesting is that? That the time frame of Moses, from a baby, 3 months hidden, 3 months here, he was 80 when the Exodus story happened. And Mercury orbits the sun in 88 of our Earth days. 8 meaning 80 and then plus, that's why it's 8 and 9. And Moses was 80. It says that, and the chemical element of mercury, that name Mercury, is 80. You can look it up. I usually fact check it before I come on. But for sure, the chemical element, the atomic number of mercury is 80. So we have a correlation here. What's interesting is that this calendar, the flyby, going back to the Bepi Colombo was launched according to published data on October 20th of 2018, and is set to complete its full mission at the end of this month, December of 2025. Actually, the date is December 25th, 2025. So it's a very pivotal time right now. And incidentally, the 25th chapter of Leviticus is where the sequence of 8 and 9 came from. It's PL-89 not just because of 89 days, but because it's based on 8 plus 9 plus 8 plus 9 plus 8 plus 9. The themes are kind of recursive. If you can see, it's kind of like the same idea is kind of repeating over. It's kind of like meta. It's like self-referencing. It's like 89 days, and then it goes 8 plus 9, 8 plus 9, and it goes back. And so it comes from Leviticus chapter 25, verse 20, and we're in the year 2025. So it's all kind of just, it's kind of like a rhyme, kind of a cute, self-repetitive rhyme that is kind of like playfully self-referencing. And so the two coordinates for today are 13 and 8. And because it corresponds to the Hebrew date and the Gregorian date. The Hebrew date, which is the lunar calendar, and that's 18th day of every month. Today is December 18th. It's always going to be any 18th, whether it's Kislev or December or I forgot the Islamic calendar name, but if it's that, it's always going to be right here on box number 8. And what's interesting is that through the rule of 40 means you add 40 to it. 40, 48, 88. And 88 equals Exodus, which I spoke about today. 88 is also basically the amount of days of Mercury's orbit, which correlates to what I was speaking about today. So that number would go there. Okay. But in terms of 13, this is the 28th day of any month. This happens to be Kislev 28, but it could be December 28th, it could be Rabi Elul. That was 3 months ago. It was in Elul, September 18th, would have been right here. The box number is 13, and today, if you add 13 and 8, you'll get, of course, 21. And 21 is in English gematria the name Ben. Now, what I started to do was saying analyze names by their number, meaning if you use the cipher, the English ordinal gematriatic cipher of A equals 1, B equals 2, you can have some really amazing results. I'll just give a few examples, and I'll leave it with that. If you add the letters up of the word ki, like K is the 11th letter, E is the 5th letter, and Y is the 25th letter, if you add 11 and 5 and 25, you're going to get 41. But the word lock, everyone can see a clear relationship between ki and lock. L is the 12th letter, O is the 15th letter, C is the 3rd letter, and K is the 11th letter. If you add 12, 15, 3, and 11, that's going to be 41 as well. So how is it that ki and lock have the same number? Is there some intention behind that? Is there some... did someone plan that? If that was just if that was just one, that would be an interesting coincidence. But there are so many others that it doesn't seem that this was done arbitrarily. It seems that there's some wisdom, there's some knowledge, planning behind the English language and other languages as well. I'm using this gematriatic analysis with the primary languages of English and Hebrew, but it could be certainly used with Greek, and I started with Greek about 4 or 5 years ago. I was studying Greek for a while, but I think for this time, English and Hebrew are the most important for me, for my work right now. And there's a few others, like the word Y equals because. WHY equals 56, and because, spelled the way it is 56. You can check these out. The word buy is equal to the word sell. 48. Buy equals sell equals trade. That's pretty interesting. And the word food equals the word table. People can see a clear relationship between those two. Chair is just one off. They're all equal to 40. Food is equal to table. A chair is 40. These are some might say this is just neat coincidences, but I don't think so. So based on these findings, I took this to become. It has become. I don't know if I took it, but it has become a life work for me. I've been involved for the past 12 years. Really, the year that this calendar came into being is when these English gematria versus Hebrew gematria was really taken seriously. And we'll leave it at that for now.